So why learn about homeopathy? Well, there's two reasons to learn about homeopathy. One is it's not what you think it is. Most people's perception of homeopathy is, well, a homeopathic medicine is a natural remedy. That's not what it is. And I'm going to explain to you what it exactly is. Once you actually find out, most of you are going to be quite shocked what it actually is. That's the first reason. The second reason is to try to reconcile ancient forms of wisdom. Now, I don't know if you want to consider it ancient. It started in Germany in the 1780s. But sort of a pre-scientific form of wisdom. How do you reconcile that with our current understandings of biology, chemistry, and physics? How do you do that? And I think this is a wonderful example of how you can really learn a lot from understanding how people thought in the 1700s, right? So, this is Samuel Hahnemann. He is the one person who invented homeopathy single-handedly by himself. Now, if any of you here study alternative medicine, you will know that a lot of alternative medicines are like this. It's from a single human being. A single person has an anecdote, and then an entire system of medicine evolves around them. So this is a great example. So Samuel Hahnemann is the one person who invented homeopathy in the last, Exactly, yes, and I'll get into that. That's a wonderful point you just brought up. So, the first point of homeopathy, there are two major points. This is the first point that he discovered. So, in Latin, similia similibus sorrentur, which basically means like treats like. The actual apocryphal story starts off with Hahnemann, who in the 1700s, they already have some medicinals from Brazil and South America, which this is the cinchona tree, right? And the cinchona tree, you take the bark and you can use it for fever type illnesses like malaria. And the cinchona tree is what? What's the active ingredient? Quinine is from the cinchona tree. So that it's actually a natural medicine. And the South Americans seem to have figured that out. So Hahnemann himself experimented with himself, and he took cinchona bark by himself, and what he noticed was that it replicated the symptoms of malaria. He got feverish, he got flushed, he had like an alternating fever, a little bit of a rash. To him, it replicated the symptoms of malaria. So from his one anecdote, he came up with this. A remedy will cure a sick person if it causes the same symptoms in a healthy person. Okay?
For those of you, since quinine, when we started pharmacology, we just had a few drugs to give. One was quinine.
Yeah.
So those side effects were very, very common.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is where we get the word homeopathy. Homeo means the same as pathy, the disease, as opposed to allopathy. This is what all of you are called, allopathic physicians. You've heard that term before, right? This means that you treat a disease with something different. That's all that means. So when you call yourself an allopathic doctor, it's really, it's an insult from a homeopathic doctor. That's what it really means. It really doesn't mean what you think it means, right? Interesting. Now, with this one idea of like treats like, and how if you give a treatment to a healthy person, and whatever symptoms they feel, that's how you find a homeopathic treatment. This is what Hahnemann called his provings. Right? So this is what he did for proving. This is how he figured out if a medicine worked or not. He took healthy volunteers, so you had to be healthy, and he gave them the remedy, even himself. There was no control group, there was no placebo group, and there was no blinding. And basically said, write down all your symptoms. Write down everything you feel in the next 24 hours. So let me give you an idea of this. So this is a nostrum, a homeopathic nostrum called Natrum muricaticum. And this is what it treats. It treats because when people took this, this is what they felt. It treats heavy eyelids, anemic headache of schoolgirls, constipation, diarrhea, palms hot and perspiring, hangnails, sensation of coldness of heart, dreams of robbers, oily skin, warts on the palms of the hands, and chills between 9 and 11 a.m. So if you have a patient that has any of these symptoms, you can give them natrum muriaticum. Now, what is natrum muriaticum? Sodium chloride. Sodium chloride, salt, table salt. Okay? So this is what happened when somebody took table salt. A whole bunch of people, they experienced some of these symptoms. Therefore, you can treat it. Therefore, you can use salt to treat them. Okay? Yeah.
Homeopathy and herbal medicine, like how do you differentiate between the two?
Oh, that's what I'm trying to show you, that it really has nothing to do with herbal medicine.
Okay.
It's a complete misunderstanding that most of us have about homeopathy. And that's why I wanted you guys that's why it's so important to learn, right? Okay, so now, so therefore, if you wanted, and from a homeopathic point of view, if somebody was having insomnia and anxiety, what would you use?
Sodium chloride?
No. Well, put it this way, what causes anxiety and insomnia in a healthy person?
You could use caffeine.
Yes! Wonderful, Judy. Right. So caffeine in a healthy person, if you took caffeine during the day, lots of it, you feel anxious and you can't sleep. So therefore, for insomnia, use caffeine. Let me show you their commercial. Hope this. Yeah. Shit. Oh, it didn't play my video. Damn it. Anyway, it was a commercial that's Borean, who is the big pharma of homeopathy. They're a massive company. It's a multi-billion-dollar company in France that is the one that provides homeopathy. So with this, you have a huge thing. It's called the Homeopathic Pharmacopoeia of the United States, HPUS. And this has tons of different treatments from those provings. Some of my favorites, include the south pole of a magnet. This is a treatment, right? You ground up a magnet. Dog's earwax. Tears from a young weeping girl. Fossilized dinosaur bones. Arsenic. Poison ivy. And my second favorite, eclipsed moonlight. So basically they have eclipsed moonlight and they have like a ball of water and they let the ball of water be exposed to the eclipsed moonlight. But my favorite, and I think Arthur would really like this one, Berlin Wall. So it's a piece of the Berlin Wall. And what do you think, what does it treat?
Anger?
Yes, close. Sensations of loneliness. Treats loneliness. Right? Because the Berlin Wall created loneliness, therefore if you give a little bit of it, it'll treat loneliness. Just wanted to show you, I'm not making any of this up. This is, go look at the HPUS. This is all in there. All right, I'll skip this part. So that's the first part of homeopathy. Like treats like, and you can prove what medicines work by giving it to a healthy person, whatever symptoms they get, that's what it'll treat. The next concept in homeopathy gets even, believe it or not, stranger. The more dilute a nostrum is, that's what they're called, the medicines in homeopathy, they're called nostrums. The more dilute the nostrum is, the more powerful it is. Okay? But before we get into this thing, I want to show you the real misunderstanding is that most of us don't really, it's hard for us to think exponentially. Let me give you an example. This is a wonderful mental mind game. Take a piece of paper, fold it in half again, fold it in half again, do that 50 times, 50. how thick will that piece of paper be?
I don't think you can fold it.
You can't. But just say you could. You're right. After 8, I think you're done, right? But just say you could fold it 50 times. How thick would it be? Well, let's calculate it. Yes, it's exponential. So the answer is this. It's a piece of paper, say 0.05 millimeters, times 2 to the exponent 50. It's 1 million kilometers. That piece of paper would be as thick as from here to the moon. Now, most of us don't think this way because we think linearly. This is the point. We can't think exponentially. After a couple of exponents, we're done. We're unable to think in those terms, right? So this is very important because the dilutions in homeopathy also are to extreme exponentials. And you don't think that it gets that diluted, but it really does. So let me show you an example. In homeopathy, things are labeled as, you'll look at the back of a homeopathic medicine and it'll say C, which stands for cent or 100. So this is a 4C dilution. So what I do is, I take my coffee bean, I put it in 100 milliliters, I shake it up. That's 1C. Then I take 1 cc of this, or 1 milliliter, and I put it in here, shake it up. That's a 2C dilution. Then I take 1 milliliter and put it into 100 milliliters of water, shake it up. 3C, and then a 4C. So that's a 4C dilution, which basically is 100 times 100 times 100 times 100, which is 100 to the 4th exponent, which is basically 1 part in 100 million, or kind of like a pool. I mean, that's almost like that's like diluting it into a pool. Okay? Now, let's go a little bit higher. Now, remember, what are most homeopathic solutions? 30C. 30, 3-0. Let's just go to 12. So 12C. So if I take a 12C dilution, it is the equivalent of me taking, it's like going to Miami Beach, pouring in my caffeine into one with 24 zeros after it, milliliters, which is about the amount of water there is on the planet Earth, and shaking it, in other words, pouring it at Miami Beach, coming back in maybe 1,000 years, and just randomly going and picking up water. How many molecules of the caffeine are actually going to be in there? Okay? That's me shaking up the planet, all right. So basically, it's about a single molecule is going to be there. Why is this? Well, 1 gram of hydrogen has 1 mole, which is 6.22 times 10 to the 23rd molecules. What's that called from basic chemistry? Avogadro's number. Excellent. So, of course, Hahnemann didn't know about this, so you can kind of excuse him a little bit. But basically, Avogadro's number, you look it up, so you get down to a single molecule. What's the definition of a molecule? It's the smallest particle of matter that can exist independently and retains all the properties of a substance. So you can't divide a molecule in half. If you do, it's no longer that substance, right? So once you go past 12C, you got nothing, right? There's nothing there anymore past 12C. Now, this is made fun of by a group of, homeopathy is very big in England. This is Boots Pharmacy, which is kind of their CVS. And this is a group of people, they call themselves 10 to the 23rd, which after Avogadro's. They do this every October the 23rd. And what they do is they take a mass overdose of homeopathic medicines. They go to Boots Pharmacy and they just buy tons of it and just drink it, to show that obviously it's just water and there's nothing there. So
One of those yet? That sounds like
I would go, but it's in London. But next October I may attend that because it's hilarious. I think it's very funny. And then there's, I didn't make these jokes up. There's so much ridicule of this. It's funny. So this is a cartoon. It says, okay, this time I've diluted the semen by 30x. We'll be sure to get pregnant now. And then the thing is, belief in homeopathy is not evolutionary selected for. Anyway, very funny. Next cartoon, you have homeopathy mart. Your total comes to $89.75. Takes a tiny bit of the dollar and says, keep the change. And then this is funny, homeopathic cartoon. There's like nothing in it anyway. So all right, and this quote, the only thing homeopathy can cure is dehydration. Funny. Anyway, why isn't this going? Okay, has anyone seen this medicine? Okay, what is it? Yes. Oh, shit. Well, does anyone know what it is? Okay, all right, so what it is, here's the story of oscillococcinum, okay? In 1918, during the Spanish flu epidemic, there was a French researcher, and looking under a microscope, he sees these oscillating, what he thinks is cocci, round circles. He also happens to have noticed that in duck liver, that he happened to be looking at, there were also oscillating bacteria. So Anis barbarae is the duck liver, and oscillococcinum is duck liver that is diluted down, do you see this? 200 C. Can you imagine, I just talked about 30 C. There's only 10 to the 60 molecules in the universe, or atoms in the universe. If you have a 200 C, like you would need an infinitesimal number of universes to dilute that water in. That's how many active molecules there are. This is what oscillococcinum is. This is what you are selling to your, or giving to your patients. This is now by the way, when he was seeing the oscillating bacteria, what was he seeing under a microscope? It's called Brownian motion. Have you heard of Brownian motion, right? My video's not working here, but it's not playing it. But you could see, when you look under a microscope, you can see things just moving. It's just Brownian motion that happened. So it was, so this whole thing is based on a silly idea, on a mistake, diluted to nothing, right? So the Harriet Hall said, the liver is long gone, but you're still left with a quack. Anyway. I think it's funny. All right, so now I can't show you this either because the video's not working, but this is a commercial from Boiron, I'm not pronouncing it correctly, about like sort of making Oslo really cool. And in the video, you see this New York concierge doctor who is promoting, hey, I give it to my children, it's safe, I see them, and there's lots of clinical evidence that this works. And that's what's in the video, but unfortunately I can't show it to you. All right, so now you go to modern homeopaths who, we can excuse Hahnemann because he was a man of his time, right? We didn't understand physics and chemistry and biology that well. So you go to modern homeopaths and you ask them, is there a single molecule in a homeopathic remedy of the active ingredient? And they say no. They agree. Nothing there. Not a single molecule. So you're like, okay, how does that work? Well, water has memory. So the water remembers that it was next to the active ingredient. Water has memory. Once again, I didn't make any of this stuff up. You start to get people making fun. If water has memory, then homeopathy is full of crap. Right, because think about it. Like the water that they use for the nostrums once was in someone's toilet, or who knows where it came from, and it remembers being next to feces, or remembers being next to what? Like, how does...
Do they give the rationale for the
The very good question. Not really. Not really. There's well, it's based on the homeopathic provings, right? Those proving things. So they'll try different dilutions, and then when the person feels those symptoms, if you take a 200 and you feel flu-like symptoms the next day, oh, okay, well, it's 200. So, yeah.
Do you have to be, like, what kind of credentials do you have to be like a homeopathic? What is it? It's not a doctor. Like, what is it?
Well, they're called homeopaths. Now, we'll get to that. It's very another wonderful question. Again, this is a very funny video about this kid. He's in London. He goes, I'm going to cure all the world's diseases. He takes his homeopathic kit, and they have a homeopathic remedy for heart disease. And he says here, and he throws it in this little stream, which empties out into the ocean. He goes, this is going to be so potent by the time people get this in the drinking water, I'm going to cure the world of heart disease. Funny. Sorry. I wish these videos would work, but they are not. Let me get to the next slide. Okay. So the homeopaths then, right, have said, listen, forgetting to mention succussion makes us look stupid. Could you please tell everybody about succussion? Okay, I'm going to tell you guys about succussion, which is another thing the homeopaths do, and then you'll maybe understand this whole sort of water memory thing, okay? So when Hahnemann, who had very astute observational skills, when he did, oh, there's a video that was sort of working. On the screen here, it's working. Anyway, so when Hahnemann did house calls and took his nostrums in a little saddle and rode to the house calls, those patients got better more than the patients that came to his office. So what he realized was that, there's a real delay here. What he realized was that if you take the nostrum and you hit it, particularly on a leather pad, it has to be a leather pad, that'll transfer the water memory. It'll transfer the substance and sort of imprint itself kind of on the water. So modern homeopaths today, when they're doing the preparation, so remember I showed you, they take the thing, they take the active ingredient and put it in the 100 cc's, but then they go, boom, on a leather, that's succussion. So,
What year was Hahnemann?
late 1700s.
Was he in Philadelphia?
No, Germany.
Oh, Germany.
Germany. Now, just to answer your question, because you guys seem to be interested in this, by the year 1900, there were, I'm forgetting, it's something like 20 or 40 homeopathic medical schools, including Hahnemann, in the United States, 15,000 homeopathic physicians by the year 1900. And the question is, why? And I'm going to get into that. This is really stuck now. Let me just get to, okay. So another thing that happened in homeopathy is something known as the Jacques Benveniste affair. And this is a very interesting thing that happened. So there's a very prominent French scientist who was an immunologist in the 1990s. It's kind of like a rock star of science in the 1990s. And he developed this test that would to test allergies by the degranulation of basophils. So when you would put the allergen next to a basophil, it would degranulate. Kind of like the food allergy testing, the LCAT test, kind of like that. So he developed that test. Now what he noticed is that when he diluted the antigen and kept on diluting it, the basophils would degranulate. So he thought that he had proof, 100%, that water does have memory, that you can dilute these things to nothing and the basophils will still degranulate. He published this in Nature. Now, Nature was very skeptical about this, and actually they said, you can publish this, but you have to allow us to evaluate your lab. And he said, fine. And they went to evaluate his lab. And what was happening is that he replicated the results, and they were shocked. But what they noticed was that the experimenters knew which tubes were placebo, just water, and which tubes were the homeopathic dilutions. Then they conducted a double-blind study, and it disappeared. So this is a great example. This is a great example in the history of medicine about the need for double blinding. You need to blind the experimenters as well. Great example. And after that, his career was kind of ruined. So there's a lot of people that have ruined their careers based on. Finally, okay. This is from the original study. This is a video. This is him, Benavides, but the video's not playing. Let me just go through here. Okay, and like I said, the importance of double blinding. And it always reminds me of a wonderful quote that I think is probably the most important for all of us, which is from Richard Feynman, the famous physicist. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool. Okay, now what about evidence-based medicine? What does evidence-based medicine say about this? In other words, doing clinical trials on homeopathic medicines and just see if people get better. And for instance, this is a study that I find very interesting from Brazil, where they take these poor workers who are poisoned with lead, okay, because of horrible working conditions. They took 131 workers with increased lead in their blood, and they randomized them to plumbum metallicum. What is plumbum metallicum? It's lead. So they gave people with lead toxicity, lead, diluted to nothing. Anyway, this is homeopathy for you. A great example. It's like treats like. So if someone has a lead overdose, give them lead. This is the kind of thinking, philosophy we're dealing with here. And of course, the study showed no difference in lead levels. I don't know if any of you were surprised, but that's what it showed. And the point here is maybe the research money could have been put to better use, like buying gloves and protective shielding, things like that. But I don't know. I'm just, maybe I'm biased. The point here is that that's just one trial. There are many clinical trials showing that homeopathy works. Many trials, which doesn't surprise me at all. And in fact, this is from at Harvard. They had an integrative medicine symposium. And Scottish homeopath David Riley, very famous homeopath, he actually brought up these clinical trials, which he has done several of himself. And he said, either homeopathy works or controlled trials don't.
What year?
Like 2005, maybe about 10 years ago. He said either homeopathy works.
Yeah, put the dates, some of this.
Oh, okay. Got it. And he's right. Controlled trials don't work. He's 100% right. And this brings up the next point of how evidence-based medicine has been hijacked. And this is John Ioannidis from Stanford. He's the head of epidemiology there. There's a wonderful quote from him in an article he wrote called Evidence-Based Medicine Has Been Hijacked. The very same people who were previously spitting when mentioning evidence-based medicine are using the very same term to buttress their eminence-based medicine claims to prestige misusing the tools of evidence-based medicine. So that's very interesting. And I see that in the last 20 years, a huge trend for alternative medicine to use evidence-based medicine and get positive studies and say, see, no, evidence-based medicine shows that these things work. Now, what's really going on is that if you plot And this was a guy named Edsel Ernst, who I think he's at Oxford. He studies alternative medicine, and he was showing that if you look at homeopathy studies and you put them on what's called a JADAD score, which if any of you have heard of that, that's a score of how good the study is, lack of bias, whether it's double-blinded, controlled, all these things. The higher the JADAD score, in other words, the better the score, the less the effect size goes, and it basically goes to nothing. So in other words, if you look at the bad trials, there's a tons of effect. If you look at the good trials, there's no effect of homeopathy. So that's not surprising. Prince Charles loves homeopathy. And in fact, in the UK, oh yeah, the UK, it's actually, they have a homeopathic hospital, and it is covered by the NHS. Yes.
What are the rates of mortality there compared to the regular hospitals?
Well, that's a great point. Yes, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Amazon.com, this is the homeopathic emergency kit. And it has, like, literally, it's hilarious. You have to read some of the things. It's like, a dissected aortic aneurysm. It's like, you're going to take, like, homeopathy. But you know what? It's not funny because you have this. Homeopaths Without Borders. These are homeopaths that go to Haiti and go to poor places around the world and give homeopathic medicines instead of, for instance, immunizations. And to me, this is a cruel joke played on the poor. Because they think, hey, I'm getting this Western medicine, I'm getting this high-tech stuff, and you're not really. It's crazy, right? And the other thing, which is very interesting, and I think you'll find this pragmatic, is that it's a Trojan horse for the supplement industry. And the reason is because homeopathy there's a Royal Copeland, this guy, was a homeopath and a New York senator. And he passed in 1938 a very famous act. It's called the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act of 1938, completely grandfathering all homeopathic medicines. You don't need to get it approved. You don't need anything. If it's on the list, if it's in the HPUS, which I showed you, the homeopathic pharmacopoeia of the US, if it's in there, you can sell it however you want and almost make any claim you want as well, which supplements can't do. So, did you know that cold ease was homeopathic? Take a look. Now, but hold on a second. Let's look at the back. You guys know what cold ease is, right? Just zinc, right? Now, most of you didn't say, well, but they're not using homeopathic principles because zinc has a mechanism of action. It blocks the ICAM receptor to prevent the virus from growing. That's allopathy. That's not homeopathy, right? You're not giving the virus. You're giving something that blocks the virus. It's actually, so it doesn't sound homeopathic at all. And here, let's look at the back. What do you see? Active ingredient, zincum gluconicum. It's 2X. So basically, with 2X, it's still active. It's still a significant amount of milligrams. So this isn't there's nothing homeopathic about this. Why? Why did they do this? Because they can get it easily passed. If they actually did this as a supplement, it would be more difficult to get it passed. And then you get other sort of weird products. You've got arnica. So here's arnica at 1C. In other words, it's not diluted at all. So this is arnica gel, right? Same thing. You see the company Boiron. And same thing, arnica may have some anti-inflammatory effects and some of this, which is not homeopathic in principle at all. That's allopathic. And then you get arnica 30C as pills. It's kind of confusing, you must admit. So when your patient says, I'm taking arnica, well, which one? Are they taking 30C, which is basically water? Well, sugar pills, because at the end of they take the water and they put it on a sugar pill and let it evaporate. Another very interesting thing is CVS has in 2014 made some very strong statements about cigarettes. They got rid of cigarettes from all of their stores with some wonderful, listen to what they said. As the delivery of healthcare evolves with an emphasis on better health outcomes, reducing chronic disease and controlling costs, CVS is playing an expanded role in providing care. Put simply, the sale of tobacco products is inconsistent with our purpose. Making cigarettes available in pharmacies, in essence, it renormalizes the product by sending the subtle message that it cannot be all that unhealthy if it's available for purchase where medications are sold. These are wonderful principles, and hooray to CVS for doing that. But then when you go to the CVS, the aisle, you'll see this, which is selling people for, expensive water or sugar pills. So to me, I see this as inconsistent. I find it interesting. But getting to a lot of the points that some of you made, homeopathy was a catalyst for change. And basically, the reason homeopathy was created, and you got to give Hahnemann credit for this, is that he was in the age of what's known as heroic medicine. What is heroic medicine? Has anyone heard the term before? Heroic medicine is the extreme form of Hippocratic medicine. This was the form of medicine that Benjamin West and all these famous doctors in the United States were practicing in around the 1700s. As I've told you guys the story before about how George Washington was bled to, he had a cold, and at 67 or 8 years of age at Mount Vernon, his doctors, he had the best doctors in the country, come in. What did they do? They bled 2 liters of blood from him. This was the aggressive type of, it's called heroic medicine. So in other words, they took Hippocratic medicine but amplified it. And they used to give very toxic chemicals such as, they used to give people mercury and arsenic and all these things. So Hahnemann noticed these treatments were horrible. He noticed it. And therefore, if you went to a homeopathic hospital, you ended up with better outcomes. Exactly what you said. People noticed this in the 1800s. And this is why, by the year 1900, 22 homeopathic colleges and 15,000 practitioners in the United States. Because really, giving nothing is better than heroic medicine. Like giving water is better than giving heroic medicine. Very interesting. But, and Arthur's going to like this, this probably led to the systematic reevaluation of Western medicine in the United States, otherwise known as the Flexner Report. So Abraham Flexner in 1910 was an educator, and he looked at Johns Hopkins and he looked at the model of how they practiced medicine, which was science-based. Johns Hopkins was connected with labs. It had pathology labs. It required people to get an undergrad degree before they started medical school. Whereas all the other medical schools were sort of more proprietary. They were just a bunch of doctors saying, hey, follow me around, and I'll give you a degree. So this completely changed the standard of medicine and made us better. And we have the science-based medicine that we have today, probably because of homeopathy and how it pointed out what was going on. And
Lester's grandson is our patient.
exactly, yes. So I have a very funny video, which I can't really show you because this thing isn't playing, but thank you very much.